What are you made of?
Rocks.
Wait, it's just rocks?
Space rocks.
Oh, that's great. Want to make a bet?
What is it?
I bet I can punch through you.
I don't want to make that bet.
Ladies, gentlemen, and tarnished of all ladies, it's time to talk fisting, which of course is the correct terminology to describe using fist weapons against your enemies. And while I have covered a fist build before, that one was more about pure damage, whereas this one is an interesting utility interaction expanded into a full-on build capable of taking care of most enemies that you'll come across in Elden Ring, if you are so inclined. I mean, some people like fists more than others, I get that, but what's hard not to like is the concept of being just a fist-based bulldozer.
I'm coming with crazy fist.
The main advantage that this build brings is hyper armor, the ability to just power through incoming attacks to deal your own damage with no regard for your own physical health, for the results upon your own body. And as such, this build is just much better in PvP than it is in PvE. Hyper armor is a bit limited in PvE, partially because a lot of creatures have such big bodies and weapons that it doesn't quite work anymore anyways, and partially because the point of hyper armor is to allow you to trade damage for damage, and against a boss that has any difficulty, you'll definitely be at a disadvantage if you get hit every time that you hit them. And so in PvE, while you still have this effect active and it does still work, you have to play it much more closely to regular fist weapons fighting style, finding your openings and taking advantage of them, with the caveat that any small hits incoming mean you can just charge your heavy attack and go mental in exchange for a small hit of incoming damage. PvP, however, is where this absolutely shines. At the end of the day, yes, you're still using fist weapons, and so it can be hard to get within your enemy's circle of range if they're using something like a great spear or a halberd or even ranged weapons, but what the hyper armor allows you to do is to try and bait your enemy into attacking you first. And then, even if they do hit you once, you can trade a full combo hit for that. Or if they try to hit you and fail, you can break their poise while not losing your poise in the slightest. In fact, while the attack gets this crazy amount of poise in this situation, it is a charged heavy attack, you can use it uncharged for the same potency, only losing out on a bit of damage. A lot of our damage boosting options affect said charged attack specifically, so they don't work if you use it uncharged, but the hyper armor is still there, and that is the most important part. So essentially, you just have to use it to either preemptively or reactively time your attack with when your enemy is attacking you, with when they are in your fist range, regardless of if they are ready to hit you or not. If you trigger a bleed against them, which this build is very capable of, then you'll just win flat out on top of the base damage of the weapon. If you don't trigger a bleed, you will both put them to low enough health to finish them with a second combo, and also put the fear of God into them when they realize that they don't flinch you with their hits. Normally, this is what bigger weapons rely on, the smaller weapon just not being able to attack due to being flinched from out of their range. This build removes that part of the equation. So, what makes this all come together then? Well, first things first, we are using the Star Fist weapons as simultaneously the highest AR and also highest bleed applying fists. And then onto those, we have put the Barbaric Roar Ash of War. This weapon skill gives you hyper armor relative to the weapon that you are using, and so while you might not really notice it massively on something like a colossal weapon that already has massive poise on heavy attacks, this situation, this build, these fists, this is where you can really feel exactly how much this skill adds on. The Roar also changes your heavy attack in general to be a 3-hit combo, giving you a lot of extra poise damage and just damage in general, on top of raising your attack power as a whole when active. Yes, you can use this Ash of War on pretty much any weapon and see it do pretty good things, but on a fist weapon you get the most surprising results, the most actively changed playstyle, and that is why we're here the way that we are. To get the Star Fist weapon, you need to head to the Colosseum at the southern end of the capital city of Leyndell, which can be reached simply by walking over there, both before and after the status change of Leyndell within the story. The Ash of War itself, Barbaric Roar, is found simply by killing a scarab located at the very northern end of the ravine on the north side of Liurnia. Simply follow the river all the way to the very end and murder the little guy waiting there for you to give him some love and affection.
Why did you say it like that?
Once you have those, you'll be able to make the base combo that fuels this build. So what do we have to buff that combo? Well, we have the Star Fist to occult, make it scale with arcane, as well as making the bleed on the weapon scale up with our arcane too. So we have the White Mask helmet on to boost our damage by 10% for 20 seconds after triggering a bleed. And then we also have the Lord of Blood's Exaltation Talisman for a 20% damage boost for 20 seconds from the same source, for a total of a 30% bonus damage. The mask itself is found by defeating mentioning the NPC invaders that show up in the Lake of Blood outside of Mohg's palace, just down the hill from the Site of Grace, and the Lord of Blood's Exaltation talisman comes from the boss at the end of the Lane Dell Catacombs dungeon, found in the sewers under Lane Dell itself. For the other talismans, arguably the next most important one is the Roar talisman, which boosts roar and breath damage by 15%, but also uniquely affects those buffing roar effects by boosting the damage of the new heavy attack combo that you gain by 15% as well, making it quite special for a purpose like this. To get this one, you have to defeat the boss at the end of the Limgrave Tunnels dungeon in the north side of the Lake of Akil. Then, as we are using the heavy attack of the weapon, we may as well charge the attack whenever possible for maximum damage and reach, and as such it makes sense to use the Axe talisman, which boosts charge attack damage by 10%. To find this one, you need to go down these stairs located in the Mistwood Ruins on the eastern side of Limgrave. The final talisman slot is a bit of a free one, nothing particularly affects damage further than this. Rotten Winged Sword Insignia can work if you ever hit 4 hits in a row, but because the main combo is 3 hits and the main use of this build is PvP, it just won't happen often enough to justify a full-on talisman slot, so instead, I recommend some sort of utility talisman based on what you're doing, with Erdtree plus 2 being my personal preference for this, raising your health, stamina, and equip load a pretty fair amount, all of which being very useful for this build. Or alternatively, you could use something like the Dragon Crest Great Shield to enhance your physical damage resistances. It entirely depends on your goals for what and who you are fighting. For the Flask of Wondrous Physic, the obvious choice here is the Spiked Cracked tier, which boosts your charged attack damage by 15% for 3 minutes after drinking, thus making our charged heavy attack stronger and stronger in combination with everything else involved. And for the other slot, you are once again free to choose depending on the situation. To get the Spiked Crack tier, simply head to the Minor Erdtree on the eastern side of Liurnia and you'll find it sitting on an altar waiting to be picked up. As well, you'll want any sort of sacred seal in your left hand to allow you to cast incantations, and the specific incantations that you want to cast are unbelievably unique, never used before in any other build ever.
I don't believe you.
Yeah, that's right, it's the old classic combo of Golden Vow and Flame Grant Me Strength, the former of which raises your damage by 15% and your defense by 10% for 80 seconds after casting, and the latter raising both your physical and fire damage by 20% for 30 seconds. To get Golden Vow, head to the Corpse Tent Shack on the eastern side of Mount Gelmir, and to find Flame Grant Me Strength, head behind Fort Gale on the western side of the Caelid region. Aside from this, use whatever armor set makes you feel fashionable, or just the heaviest one that your endurance will allow in order to make you harder to kill and even harder to interrupt during your attacks. On which note, I bet you're wondering what the attributes are for this lovely little combination of a build, and the answer is mostly arcane. As we have set the weapon to occult scaling to allow the bleed to increase and make our damage higher, we need to have the arcane to fuel it so we can aim for the soft cap of 80 here. After that, vigor is extremely important these days, and I recommend that you get to 60, though it is technically manageable anywhere above 40. Past this, 25 faith to use our 2 buffing incantations, and then pile points into endurance until you're able to use your armor set of choice with this build. If you reach that limit, put any further points into strength first and then dexterity, as the weapon still scales damage with those stats secondarily. With that, you have everything you need to plunge your hands deep into your foes and rip out their still beating hearts just to crush them in front of their own eyes. Or I guess to punch them, whatever your style is, no judgment here. I hope you've enjoyed seeing this build come together, and if not taking the whole thing on to try out yourself, I hope you at least gain some inspiration for your own builds based on one piece of this or another mentioned in here. Like if you like the video, subscribe and hit the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.